What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors walks onto a talk show set expecting a normal interview, only to be blindsided by a host who seems determined to tear him down? In just 31 seconds of brutal commentary, Jon Stewart went from beloved television personality to the villain of his own show, sparking a confrontation so intense that security had to get involved. This is the story of how Samuel L. Jackson got kicked off The Daily Show and how one host's ego destroyed what should have been a simple conversation. Samuel L. Jackson arrived at the studio that evening expecting what he always got: respect. The man had been in the industry for decades, carved out a legendary career, and earned his place among the greats. He walked onto that set with the same energy he brought to every interview, ready to talk about his latest project, share some stories, and give the audience a good time. But from the moment he sat down, something felt different. Jon Stewart opened with what seemed like a standard welcome. "Ladies and gentlemen, Samuel L. Jackson is here tonight," he said to applause. Samuel smiled, gave a wave to the crowd, and settled into his chair. The audience was electric. They loved him. Everyone loved him. Then Stewart started talking. "So, Samuel, let me ask you something," Stewart began, leaning back in his chair with this look on his face. Not friendly, not welcoming, something else. "You've been in, what, 100 movies at this point? Maybe more?" Samuel chuckled, playing along. "Something like that? Yeah, I've been blessed to work on a lot of great projects." "Great projects?" Stewart repeated, and there was this edge to his voice. "Right, great projects. I mean, sure, if you count the ones where you basically play the same character over and over again." The audience went quiet. You could feel the shift in the room. Samuel's smile tightened just a little, but he kept his cool. "I'm not sure what you mean by that." "Jon." "Oh, come on," Stewart said, waving his hand dismissively. "The tough guy who yells a lot. The authority figure who yells a lot. The mentor who yells a lot. I mean, is there a role you've taken where you don't just coast on that same intensity?" Samuel sat up straighter, his jaw clenched. "I think you're simplifying decades of work into a pretty narrow view." "Am I, though?" Stewart shot back. He was smirking now, like he thought this was funny, like he was proud of himself. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you found a formula that works, and you've just been cashing checks ever since." The audience was uncomfortable. You could hear people shifting in their seats. This wasn't banter. This wasn't playful ribbing between a host and his guest. This was an attack. Samuel took a breath, composed himself. "Jon, I've worked with some of the best directors in the world. I've taken on challenging roles, dramatic roles, comedic roles. I've done Shakespeare, for crying out loud. So I'm not really sure where this is coming from." "It's coming from honesty," Stewart said, and he leaned forward like he was about to make some grand point. "See, I think we live in a culture where we're not allowed to tell the truth anymore. Everyone has to be nice. Everyone has to pretend that everything is amazing. But sometimes, the truth is that an actor gets comfortable and stops trying." Samuel's eyes went cold. "You think I stopped trying?" "I think you found what works and you stick to it," Stewart said. "And hey, I get it. Why take risks when you can just show up, do your thing, collect your paycheck, and go home? It's smart, really, but let's not pretend it's art." That was the moment. That was when you could see something snap in Samuel's expression. He didn't raise his voice, didn't move, just stared at Stewart with this look that could cut through steel. "Let me tell you something, Jon," Samuel said, his voice low and controlled. "You sit behind this desk every night and you make jokes about politicians, about celebrities, about whoever you think is an easy target, and you feel good about it because the audience laughs and you convince yourself that you're doing something important. But you know what you really are? You're a guy who takes shots at people from a safe distance because you've never had the guts to put yourself out there the way real artists do." The audience was dead silent now. Stewart's smirk was gone. "I've spent my life perfecting my craft," Samuel continued. "I've auditioned hundreds of times. I've been rejected. I've struggled. I've worked my way up from nothing to get where I am. And you're sitting here in your comfortable little studio with your writers and your teleprompter telling me I don't try hard enough? You don't know the first thing about what I do." Stewart tried to jump in. "Samuel, I think you're taking this a little too personally." "Too personally?" Samuel's voice rose now, just slightly, but enough to make it clear he was done playing nice. "You just insulted my entire career on national television and you think I'm taking it too personally? I was making an observation, Stewart said, and he had the nerve to sound defensive now. Like he was the victim. It's what I do. I make observations. No, what you do is talk down to people because it makes you feel important, Samuel said. You hide behind comedy so you can say whatever you want and then act surprised when someone calls you out on it. Stewart's face was red now. Okay, you know what? I think we need to take a break. Oh, we're taking a break now? Samuel said, standing up from his chair. Now that you're not in control of the conversation anymore, now we need to take a break? Samuel, sit down, Stewart said, and his voice had this authoritative tone to it, this entitled tone, like he was the king of his little domain and Samuel was supposed to just obey. Samuel laughed, actually laughed. You're telling me to sit down? In your studio? Man, you really have lost touch with reality, haven't you? The audience didn't know what to do. Some people were gasping. Others were trying to clap, but it came out scattered and confused. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of this disaster. Stewart stood up too now. I'm the host of this show. This is my set, and I'm telling you that you need to calm down. Your set? Samuel repeated. Your show. Yeah, I'm getting that loud and clear, Jon. This is all about you, isn't it? You invite guests on here so you can feel superior to them. So you can remind everyone that you're the smart one, the funny one, the one in charge. That's not what this is about, Stewart insisted. Then what is it about? Samuel challenged. Because from where I'm standing, you started this whole thing by disrespecting me for no reason. I came here to have a conversation, to promote my work, to connect with your audience. And instead, you decided to spend your time trying to tear me down? Why? What did I ever do to you? Stewart didn't have an answer for that. He just stood there, mouth open slightly, looking like a man who had just realized he'd made a terrible mistake. You know what the worst part is? Samuel said, his voice quieter now, but somehow more powerful. I actually used to respect you. I thought you were one of the good ones. Someone who used their platform to speak truth to power, to hold people accountable. But now I see what you really are. You're just another bully with a microphone. Now wait just a minute, Stewart started, but Samuel was already pulling off his microphone. I'm done here, Samuel said. I'm not going to sit here and let you disrespect me for your entertainment. Stewart's face went from red to purple. You can't just leave in the middle of my show. Watch me, Samuel said, and he started walking toward the edge of the stage. That's when Stewart made his biggest mistake. He reached out and grabbed Samuel's arm. Samuel stopped, turned slowly, looked down at Stewart's hand on his arm, then back up at Stewart's face. Take your hand off me, Samuel said, and his voice was so calm, it was terrifying. Stewart didn't let go. You're not leaving until we finish this conversation. Take your hand off me, Samuel repeated. The audience was on the edge of their seats. You could feel the tension radiating through the entire studio. This had gone from a heated argument to something potentially dangerous. Stewart still didn't let go. This is my show. You don't get to just walk away because your feelings got hurt. And that's when Samuel pulled his arm away, hard enough that Stewart stumbled backward. Don't you ever put your hands on me again, Samuel said. Stewart caught his balance and immediately started yelling, Security! Get security up here now! Samuel laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You're calling security? On me? Because I won't let you push me. Around? You just assaulted me on my own show, Stewart shouted. I pulled my arm away from you, Samuel corrected. You grabbed me first. But sure, play the victim. That seems to be what you do best. 2 security guards appeared from the side of the stage. Big guys, the kind you don't argue with. They approached Samuel carefully, professionally. Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave, one of them said. Samuel looked at them, then back at Stewart. Yeah, I was already leaving. Before your boss here decided to put his hands on me. He assaulted me, Stewart insisted, pointing at Samuel. I want him removed from the building immediately. Samuel shook his head, disgusted. You really are something else, Jon. You start a fight, you escalate it, you grab me, and then you play victim when I defend myself. That's pathetic. Get him out of here, Stewart yelled at the security guards. The guards moved in closer, not touching Samuel, but making it clear they were ready to, if necessary. Samuel held up his hands. I'm going, he said. Trust me, I don't want to spend another second in this place. He started walking toward the exit, the security guards flanking him on either side. The audience watched in stunned silence. Some people were recording on their phones. Others just sat there with their mouths open, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. As Samuel reached the side of the stage, he turned back one last time. "You know, John, you asked me earlier if I ever get tired of playing the same character. Let me ask you something. Do you ever get tired of playing the self-righteous host who thinks he's better than everyone else? Because from what I just experienced, that seems to be your only role." Stewart started to respond, but Samuel was already gone, disappearing behind the stage with the security guards trailing behind him. The studio was chaos. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay quiet. The cameras were still rolling, capturing Stewart standing there alone on stage, looking lost and angry and humiliated all at once. Stewart turned to the audience, trying to regain some semblance of control. "Well, that was certainly something. I guess Samuel L. Jackson won't be coming back anytime soon." He tried to laugh it off, but nobody was laughing with him. A few awkward chuckles maybe, but mostly just silence. "We're going to take a commercial break," Stewart said, his voice tight. "When we come back, we'll try to have a show that doesn't involve, assault." The cameras cut, but the damage was done. Backstage, Samuel was already heading for his dressing room, the security guards still following at a respectful distance. "Sir, we're really sorry about this," one of them said. Samuel stopped, turned to face them. His anger had cooled somewhat, replaced by a weary disappointment. "You guys are just doing your jobs. I get it. This isn't on you." "For what it's worth," the other guard said quietly, "we think you were right. What he said to you up there, that wasn't cool." Samuel nodded, appreciating the sentiment. "Yeah, well, some people let a little power go to their heads. They forget that everyone deserves respect, regardless of who's signing the paychecks." He continued to his dressing room, grabbed his jacket and his bag, and made his way to the exit. Staff members peeked out from doorways as he passed, some looking sympathetic, others just curious about the drama. When Samuel reached the back door of the studio, he paused for a moment, taking a breath of the cool evening air. Behind him was chaos. A show in disarray, a host scrambling to save face, an audience that had witnessed something they'd never forget. But Samuel L. Jackson walked out of that building with his head high and his dignity intact. Back in the studio, they were trying to put the pieces back together. Stewart was in a heated discussion with his producers, arguing about how to handle the rest of the show. The audience was buzzing with confused energy, everyone talking at once about what they'd just seen. One of the producers approached Stewart. "We need to address this when we come back from commercial. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." "I know that," Stewart snapped. "I'm trying to figure out what to say." "Maybe start with an apology?" the producer suggested carefully. Stewart's eyes flashed. "An apology? For what? He's the one who assaulted me." "John, he pulled his arm away after you grabbed him first," the producer said. "And before that, you spent 10 minutes insulting his career. This whole thing is going to be online within the hour. We need damage control." Stewart ran his hands through his hair, the reality of the situation starting to sink in. "This is a disaster." "Yeah," the producer agreed. "It really is." The commercial break was ending. Stewart had to go back out there and face the audience, face the cameras, face the fact that he'd just had one of the most humiliating moments of his career broadcast live. He walked back onto the stage to scattered, uncertain applause. The energy was completely different now. Before, this had been a fun, lively show. Now it felt tense and uncomfortable. Stewart sat down at his desk, shuffling some papers that didn't need shuffling, buying himself a few seconds to think. "Okay," he finally said. "So, that happened." A few nervous laughs from the audience. "Obviously, that didn't go the way any of us expected," Stewart continued. "Samuel L. Jackson and I had a disagreement about his career choices, and things got a little heated. A little heated, that was one way to describe it. I want to be clear about something," Stewart said, and you could tell he was choosing his words carefully now. "When someone puts their hands on you, that's assault. And that's not okay, regardless of who you are or how famous you are." But even as he said it, you could see in the audience's faces that they weren't buying it. They'd watched the whole thing. They'd seen Stewart grab Samuel first. They'd seen him escalate the situation at every turn. "We invited Samuel on the show to have a conversation," Stewart went on, "and I asked him some tough questions, because that's what I do. I don't do puff pieces. I challenge my guests. But apparently, some people can't handle being challenged." There was an edge creeping back into his voice now, the defensiveness returning. So for those of you watching at home who are inevitably going to take his side in this, just remember that you saw what happened. You saw him assault me. You saw him refuse to engage in a civil conversation. That's on him, not on me. The audience was stone silent. No applause, no agreement, just silence. Stewart seemed to realize he was digging himself deeper. Anyway, we've got a great show lined up for the rest of the night. Let's try to have some fun, shall we? But the fun was over. The rest of the show limped along awkwardly, with Stewart trying too hard to be funny and the audience not quite giving him the energy he needed. Every joke fell a little flat. Every segment felt forced, and all anyone could think about was what they'd witnessed. The argument, the escalation, the moment when a host let his ego get the better of him and picked a fight with the wrong person. Because here's the thing about Samuel L. Jackson. He didn't become a legend by backing down. He didn't earn respect by letting people walk all over him. He built his career on strength, on integrity, on standing up for himself, even when it was uncomfortable. And when Jon Stewart decided to use him as a punching bag for his own amusement, Samuel did exactly what he'd been doing his whole life. He stood his ground. Jon Stewart started that interview thinking he could control the narrative, thinking he could poke and prod at his guest and it would all be good television, thinking that his position as host gave him the right to say whatever he wanted without consequences. But by the time Samuel L. Jackson walked out of that studio, it was clear who had really been in control. And it wasn't the guy sitting behind the desk. Stewart had tried to paint himself as the reasonable one, the one just doing his job, asking tough questions. But everyone watching knew the truth. This wasn't journalism. This wasn't holding someone accountable. This was a host getting drunk on his own power and forgetting that the people who sit across from him are human beings who deserve basic respect. Samuel had tried to give him an out. Multiple times, he'd tried to steer the conversation back to something productive. But Stewart kept pushing, kept needling, kept trying to prove some point that only existed in his own head. And when Samuel finally had enough and decided to leave, Stewart couldn't handle it. His ego couldn't handle the idea that someone would walk away from his show. So he grabbed him, physically grabbed him, trying to force him to stay. That's when whatever moral high ground Stewart thought he had completely crumbled. You don't put your hands on someone. You don't force them to stay somewhere they don't want to be. That's not about comedy or conversation or challenging your guests. That's about control, about power. About a host who had forgotten that his platform didn't make him untouchable. The security guards who escorted Samuel out weren't doing it because they thought he was dangerous. They were doing it because Stewart had called for them, had demanded that Samuel be removed, all while positioning himself as the victim of some assault that everyone watching knew hadn't happened the way he was claiming. It was a masterclass in how not to handle conflict, how not to treat a guest, how not to be a host. And Samuel L. Jackson walked away from all of it with his reputation not just intact, but enhanced. Because he showed everyone watching something important. He showed them that you don't have to accept disrespect, even from someone with power. That you can stand up for yourself with dignity and strength. That walking away from a toxic situation isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Jon Stewart ended that night having learned a hard lesson. That his desk and his cameras and his audience didn't give him the right to treat people however he wanted. That eventually, if you push someone hard enough, they're going to push back. And that when you pick a fight with someone like Samuel L. Jackson, you better be prepared for what happens next. The whole confrontation lasted maybe 15 minutes from start to finish. 15 minutes that destroyed what should have been a simple, pleasant interview. 15 minutes that revealed who these two men really were when the cameras were rolling and the pressure was on. One man stayed true to himself, defended his dignity, and walked away on his own terms. The other made excuse after excuse, tried to spin the narrative in his favor, and ended up looking smaller than he'd ever looked before. And that's the real story here. Not about who was right or wrong in some abstract debate about acting or comedy or journalism, but about character, about respect, about how you treat people when you have power over the situation. Jon Stewart failed that test spectacularly. Samuel L. Jackson passed it without even trying. Because at the end of the day, being the good guy isn't about never getting angry or never standing up for yourself. It's about knowing when you're being disrespected and having the strength to walk away from it. It's about maintaining your dignity even when someone is actively trying to strip it away. It's about refusing to play someone else's game when that game is designed to make you look bad. Stewart wanted conflict. He wanted drama. He wanted to be the clever host who could take down a celebrity with sharp questions and sharper commentary. What he got instead was a reminder that real people don't exist for his entertainment. The guests on his show aren't props in his performance. That respect is earned, not demanded. And in 31 seconds of questioning, he went from respected host to cautionary tale, from beloved comedian to the villain of his own show, from the guy everyone tuned in to watch to the guy everyone was talking about for all the wrong reasons. Samuel L. Jackson didn't need to throw a punch, didn't need to yell or scream or cause a scene. He just needed to stand up, say enough is enough, and walk out the door. Sometimes that's all it takes to win.